So we just meet once a week, most weeks. This this semester's been a little bit different for me, and just altogether for Melville as well. We took a break during January because we were dealing with MMEA and trying to get that going. So they really put this together in probably like 8 to 10-ish weeks, but we didn't even do every single Thursday. So one thing we worked on though, we were playing All of Me, this next song that we're going to play. So I gave them a challenge. They could get a prize if they were able to sing to me all the lyrics to All of Me, but also in the rhythm and style that Ella Fitzgerald or Frank Sinatra would do it. Some of them got it. Raise your hand if you got that prize. Raise your hand if you did that. All right, yeah, give me some love. Here we go. It was just Keely and Mooney, and nobody else got a prize for that? Drake said to take a prize. All right, but yeah, so I wanted them to learn some jazz standards, and All of Me is one of those classic tunes, and so we're going to play that for you now. I hope you enjoy All of Me. All right, you also heard from Hooney back here on the piano. Hooney Santiago. All right. She was our Count Basie for the evening. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Miss Jennifer Brown to lead the beginning band.
All right, actually first, before we have the beginner band, we're going to have one tune by our community ed class. So we have two community ed classes that meet on Tuesday nights. And we have a beginner class, which you're going to hear from a couple of those students in just a minute. And then we also have an intermediate class. So these are made up of people that either have started an instrument recently or they're revisiting an instrument that they used to play a long time ago, or some of them are our students. So this is just kind of a Tuesday evening class that meets. It's kind of extra practice time for any of our students, because I make it free for any of our students. So anybody who wants to show up Tuesday nights is typically our community ed night. So they're going to play one tune for you. They're seated down here on the floor because we're so crowded up here. Could we actually have the house lights turned on just so we can see a little better? I'm not saying that some of our musicians down here are older, but you know, we are, right? So it helps us to have light when we see. Okay, so I'm going to go down there and we're going to play one tune for you called A Shaker Gift Song. All right, so this next group we have for you is our beginner band. These are students that started their instruments in band class in August at the start of the school year. And Mr. Hardcastle and I co-teach this class, as well as Mr. Kramer comes over certain days, and we all co-teach the class. So the the 8th hour brass class. So we're able to split these kids up into smaller groups and to really focus on how they're handling their individual responsibility of playing, right? So today they're playing a lot of tunes for you. We're going to start off with a fanfare called Spring Fanfare. All right, for this next piece we're going to play for you guys, it's called Ready to Fly. I'm going to turn the baton over to Mr. Hardcastle, and I'm going to play piano back here. Okay, this next little bit we're going to play for you guys is a solo that's in their band book. And this is something that we've been doing a long time at Washington. This is my 26th year teaching at Washington Middle School. I started right out of college. This was my first job. And in my first few years, I was trying to figure out, because band was just like a before school, they could just show up or not, and a lot of times they didn't. So I was trying to figure out like little competitions, little contests, little bribes. Back in the 90s, we were big on bribing kids, way more. So I bribed them a lot to show up to band. And so we had this competition that we did that was called, well, it was a sheet full of squares, kind of like a bingo card, but it had 50 squares on it. So I was too tired to think of something in my first year teaching really creative, so I called it the square contest. And it's just kind of stuck. So we've been doing the square contest every year with our beginners since 1999. And one of the squares on their card, basically, they have all year. They've had this contest going on all year. We have some of them that are really close. Really close. So if they get to 36 squares out of the 50 squares, we have a big square party. They get to come to this party, and everything at the party is square. Square food, square music, square activities. They'll see. So we have this square party. So if they get 36 of the 50 squares done, they get to come to the party. Also, for each of the 50 squares, they're going to get some band bucks. Because unlike the second to last day of school, we have an auction. And they get to spend their band bucks at this auction and buy things. So they're going to come home with some treasures, let me tell you. The last couple days of school, you're going to have some new things for your house that you'll be really excited about. So at the auction, like I said, they'll get 5 band bucks. They'll get 5 band bucks for each of their squares that they complete. Now there's one special square on the square card that's number 118 in their book. And it's a really pretty solo. It's from Dvorak's New World Symphony. And so some of our kids have passed this off already, so we're going to show those kids off. Because in band, we really want to recognize the students that are achievers. That's like our thing, is that there's some places where they make fun of you for working too hard. And there's some places where they make fun of kids that are overachievers. And we don't believe that here. That's not what we stand for. So what we stand for is kids who work really hard, and they try really hard, and I want them to be overachievers. I want them to do more than what the average kid does. And so we're gonna have those kids right now that have already passed this off. Now they still have 2 weeks to get this done. Squares aren't due until May 12th. So they still have time. But we're going to have the kids that have already passed off number 118 play this solo for you, but they're going to play it all together. So we hope you enjoy Dvorak's New World Symphony. All right, and for our last piece that beginner band's going to play for you guys, we do have a couple of older looking beginners in the group. So on those Tuesday night community ed classes, we also have a beginner class. So we have two of our students from that beginner class that are playing with our beginner band. And again, anytime you see those community ed classes, we have a range of if you want to start an instrument, or we have some people that play one instrument, like Terry on here plays trombone. He's a senior trombone player in the high school band. But then he was like, I really wanted to learn bassoon. So he's been working on bassoon in beginner class. So it's a really kind of no pressure sort of class. And we've invited them to play with our beginners on our final two pieces. So our last piece we're going to play for you guys tonight is Firework. At the high school, he works with all the percussion classes. He helps out with jazz band. So we're really fortunate to have Coop working with us. Thank you, Coop. I told him just to stand back there and kind of growl at kids if they get out of hand. So he did his job tonight. All right, let's go ahead and have symphonic band. Can you guys file up this way, up the steps? So come up this way, symphonic band. All right, and I sent out an email earlier today. Mike, our local videographer that records all of our concerts, he's an alumni, a Band Dad alumni, and he's been recording our concerts now for like, I don't know, 15 years probably, and he puts them on YouTube. So anytime you look at those links that I sent out, Mike does it for us. But he has a lawn care business, and I guess tomorrow there's supposed to be a lot of storms, so he's trying to get a lot of jobs done tonight. So Mike is not here tonight making videos. So if any of you guys do record this tonight, if you could share a link with me tomorrow, I'd really appreciate it. The kids like watching the concert the day after, so that would be helpful. Thanks so much. All right, our next group is our symphonic band. And at the end of each school year, I give a solo to all the students in 6th and 7th grade, and they have the whole summer to practice. And then at the start of each year, I listen to them. And for those kids that I feel like have really, been working hard and they're showing that they're trying and they really want to be there, then they're placed in our symphonic band. So it's basically like a select group of our 7th and 8th graders, students who have had at least 1 year of band. So our symphonic band is going to play a piece for you tonight called Metamorphosis. This is by one of my favorite band composers, and he also, through the years, has become a friend. We've done some commissions with him where he's written some pieces. He's the band director at the University of New Hampshire. And so this is one of his pieces. I will probably recorded it earlier today. I'll probably tonight send him an email with those recordings because his music, I have followed his music since his very first band piece that he wrote when he was in college. And, I feel like I've kind of watched him evolve as a composer. So this is Andrew Boyson Jr.'s Metamorphosis. He writes music, kind of at an 8th grade, middle school level, all the way through professional groups, college groups. So he has a wide range of literature. This next composer, Frederick Speck, he only has 2 pieces that are really kind of playable by middle school, and I wouldn't even really consider them middle school type of pieces. But he's the band director at the University of Louisville. So some of our symphonic band students, last week we traveled to Louisville, and we were able to do a rehearsal with Frederick Speck and work with him on this next piece called Polaris. And it's a quirky little piece. It's got a lot of little strange things in it. And it was one of those things that the first time I heard it, I was like, I'm not really sure. And then the more we played it, the more it starts to grow on you. It just kind of gets in your ear and you can't get rid of it. So this is Polaris that we rehearsed again with the composer last week. And then after that, we're going to play another one of his pieces called Child Grove. All right, and this time we're going to invite the rest of our Eagle Band members as well as our community ed class members who are going to sit in with us on our first tune that Eagle Band is doing. So while we're having a little bit of a transition here, I did want to point out in our program, I've included copies of, we have an opportunity to play at a Cardinal game. The high school band is playing God Bless America in the pregame of a Cardinals game. It's the day after school gets out. So there's a form to fill out for that, if that's something that your kiddo is interested in participating in. We also have our summer band camps. So we have camps for students that have had 1 year or 2 years of band, and it's open to anyone, any middle schoolers in the area. So if you have nieces or nephews, or you know somebody who's in another school district, they're welcome to come to our camp. And then we also have our Melville School District Community Band, and this year we're also adding a community jazz band. And this is for adults. It's really anyone ages 13 to 113. So we have a lot of alumni that come back for this, and it's a lot of fun. It's just kind of some evening rehearsals, and then we put on a concert in August. So if you know anybody that played an instrument or plays an instrument, we have a wide range of abilities and history on you know, how they play their instrument, and so it's just kind of a fun thing. Last summer, I think we had about 90 participants, so we're looking to we can make it even bigger this year. So, all right, I think we're pretty good at this point. I've stalled enough. So we're going to start our first new band tune for you guys, Jungle Dance. All right, we have a little bit of percussion shuffling back there. Our next piece that we're going to play for you guys, when the group that went to Louisville, one of the things on our itinerary was there was a minor league baseball game. There's a minor league team down there called the Bats, the Louisville Bats. And so we played before one of their games, and their theme song is Batman. So we found this tune that it's called Batman Generations, and it goes through a bunch of different Batman theme songs. So you'll probably recognize at least one of them. So this is Batman Generations. All right, thank you guys again so much for coming tonight. We have one last tune to play for you. It's just kind of a fun tune that we like playing. I do want to say, whenever you have students for 3 years in a row, like you You know, you get attached to those kids, you feel like you really know them really well, and you kind of see them go through their ups and their downs. And so these 8th graders, I feel like we've, you know, been through a lot over the last 3 years. I'm excited for them and their future. I hope they'll keep in touch. I know a lot of them I'll see at the high school, you know, as they continue on in the band program. So I just want to thank them all for a good 3 years, and I'm wishing you guys the best.